Hello, my name is Marnie Piehl, and I'm the Communications Director for AARP North Dakota. And at AARP, we help people thrive as they age, and one of the ways we do that is to make sure that they are well aware and well protected from fraud, which is a growing concern. And today with me, I have Paul Greenwood, who is the AARP Fraud Ambassador and is with us to spread the word about many things. Paul has an impressive bio. He is a retired San Diego Deputy District Attorney. He led the Elder Abuse Prosecution Unit for 22 years and has prosecuted over 750 felony cases involving physical, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse against seniors. He consults on elder abuse cases and trains law enforcement across the country, and also trains adult protective services groups. He serves on the Criminal Justice Board of the National Adult Protective Services Association, and as I said, he's the AARP Fraud Ambassador. And he is in North Dakota this week and in North Dakota with us to spread the word and do a lot of things. So Paul, welcome to North Dakota.
Thank you, and thank you for arranging such amazing weather for this time of year. It's been beautiful.
It has been beautiful.
Yeah.
Paul, will you tell us a little bit about how you went from being a lawyer, because clearly from your accent, you're not from here.
No,
and I know that
correct.
you were a lawyer in Britain for many years and ended up in San Diego, and
Yes.
this has become your passion. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yes. So, as you say, I was a lawyer in England. They called me a solicitor, and I had the good fortune to meet, while I was traveling throughout the United States, a wonderful young lady who I fell in love with and married, Sue from San Diego. And eventually, after 13 years living in England with me, she was homesick for bluer skies, and so she persuaded me that we needed to return to her homeland. So I requalified as an attorney in California, and after a couple of years of being in what I call the civil wilderness, I only wanted to be in the criminal arena. And fortunately, the San Diego District Attorney's Office hired me. I was the first ever non-citizen that they'd ever hired, so there was a lot of pressure put on me to make sure that they had made a good choice. And then after 3 years in the office, my boss, the district attorney, called me into his office and told me that we had a major problem created through a phone call from Adult Protective Services, which is the agency that handles cases of complaints by and against older adults. And he said, apparently we are ignoring a huge escalating crime called elder abuse. And he told me, I've named you as the first head of our first ever elder protection unit. So Marnie, that's how it all began, through nothing that I was looking for, and I honestly left his office that day thinking, I'll do it for 3 years. Well, how wrong I was, because it lit a passion and a fire in me that has never been extinguished. So for 22 years, as you mentioned, I was privileged to run this program, and since I retired from that office in 2018, I've focused my attention not from prosecution now into prevention. And so that's what I love to do now, is to go around the country with AARP and try to help people understand how these frauds work and how to hopefully help people not become the next victim of financial exploitation.
Yeah, it's wonderful work and important work because it just continues. You talked about how it lit a fire, but why is it so compelling to you, this work, and what has really driven you? The stories that you've heard, or can you talk a little bit about some of those stories that just keep you moving forward in this work?
Right. Several reasons have lit the fire. One of them is my own upbringing, that my parents were very much people that I respected and looked up to. My dad was a bomber pilot in World War II. In my view, he was a true hero. My mom was a very disciplinary but loving mother. And I say to people, if you think Margaret Thatcher was tough, you've never met Mrs. Greenwood, you know. But she was a survivor of the Blitz, became an English high school teacher for many, many years. So they gave me a perfect example of what I believe to be the finest generation. And then secondly, I did spend 2 years in Kenya as a teacher. And I learned there the culture of respect for our elders. And so when I entered this whole arena of protecting older adults, I started to hear stories of people of my parents' age group who were being victimized physically, emotionally, financially. And it made me realize, how would I feel if this had happened to my own mother or my own father, and it lit a fire? Another thing that has challenged me, Marnie, and kept me pursuing this with a passion is because it is so underreported, so underinvested, so under-prosecuted. And so when my boss told me that you're going to be doing this, I came into this whole arena with no instructions, no manual, no nothing, and I had to figure it out pretty much myself. And it allowed me the freedom to go out into our community and start asking questions and start realizing there is a need for us to come together as professionals to try to solve a growing problem. Now, we haven't solved it yet. No. But that's the passion that keeps me going every day, is what can we do better tomorrow that we're not doing today that may help the next person avoid becoming a victim of a fraud.
What can we do better tomorrow to help the next person not become a victim?
I think it's a combination of things. One of them is what we've just done this afternoon since our seminar with a packed hall of over 350 older adults, which was wonderful. But the meeting that we just came from, where we brought together a whole group of law enforcement, of bankers, of adult protective services, we talked to them about the challenges they face. We're talking about we need to do a better job of sharing information with one another, because that's the key, is if you get a multidisciplinary approach to tackling this problem of elder fraud, you're going to see better results. So that's one thing that we can be doing far better. Another thing which I think we need to improve on is for those in leadership, for those who hold the purse strings, is to understand the challenges that law enforcement, that adult protective services face, and the growing need for resources for them. One of the things that I constantly say we need to do better is give adult protective services the resources they need. I just asked them today, how many caseworkers of adult protective services do you have in North Dakota? For the whole state of North Dakota, 20 people. And yet, if you asked, I don't know how many there are, how many child protective services caseworkers there are, you're going to get a far bigger number to that. It could be 5 to 1, it could be 10 to 1, I don't know. Not that I'm saying we should reduce the number of child protective service workers, but we've got to understand that to do a better job, we've got to resource APS, because by the year 2035, in this country, there'll be more people over the age of 65 than children under the age of 18. And that's in less than 10 years.
Right.
So we've got to wake up to that fact and do something about it.
So talk a little bit about how prevalent fraud is, especially among older people, and maybe some of even those the things people are familiar with that we're not talking about very much. And I also want to talk about, as you said, it's really underreported. So maybe talk about those top frauds, but then I want to hear about why it's underreported. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. And so the types of fraud cases that I have been privileged, and I call it a privilege, to prosecute over the 22 years, they started, a lot of them, with family or known suspects. Mm-hmm. So it could be an addicted son to drugs, alcohol, or gambling, who is in desperate need for money to feed his addiction. So what does he do? He steals his elderly mother's jewelry, pawns it in the local pawn shop, or he steals her checks, forges her signature. So there are lots of cases like that. It could be a caregiver who's in the home, steals precious items belonging to the older adult. And then there can be obviously the other stranger frauds and scams which are being perpetrated through email, through the smartphones, through texting, or through phone calls. And these days, we're seeing far more of the imposter scams. Hi, I'm from the FBI, I'm from the federal government, I'm from the jury commissioner, you've missed jury duty, so we're going to arrest you, or there's an alternative, you pay a fine. And so we're seeing a lot more of those types of imposter scams, and the currency that they're using is either gift cards, gold bars, or now the common form is cryptocurrency. And they're asking victims to pay their fine, to pay whatever it is they're investing in through a cryptocurrency ATM machine, which now are being built and installed in supermarkets and in gas stations all over North Dakota and everywhere else. So again, this is part of the challenge. We want the personnel who are running these ATM machines or who are selling gift cards to be on the lookout for this person who's coming in to purchase.
Well, and we're proud in North Dakota that we just passed a cryptocurrency ATM fraud law that makes sure that there are those warnings on those cryptocurrency machines and some limits on the amount you can take out and that kind of thing, which hopefully will help curb some of this because it is becoming more and more prevalent.
It will. I mean, I think isn't it the limit $1,000 a day,
so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So one kiosk can only allow you to invest $1,000. So the suspects will have you drive to another location, but in doing that, at least it may trigger some kind of red flag or suspicion as somebody goes from one ATM to the next.
So the underreporting, is it because people don't know or because they're embarrassed? I mean, what we hear a lot is there's so much shame around when people are scammed. They're so embarrassed about it.
Yes. Well, I think there's multiple reasons. And I started by talking about impairment. Yeah. So many victims of fraud today have no idea that they are being defrauded because of the cognitive challenges. It could be that today somebody in North Dakota is being taken to a notary public to sign a power of attorney. They don't know what it means, they don't know the impact of it, but once the crook has in their hands a power of attorney, they can walk into that person's bank and add their name as the power of attorney to authorize them to remove money. So it could be that. It could be, as you say, shame or embarrassment. So many of the victims that we uncovered did not come because the victim reported it. It became because, for example, a bank teller called it in, or the next door neighbor, or the relative. And when I got to ultimately speak to the victim, and I would say gently, why did you not feel that you could report it once you discovered? Oh, I didn't want my children to find out, is often the answer. There is a lot of shame attached. And so we're trying to tell people, please don't feel embarrassed. And we understand. And we're not going to talk down to you or say, how could you have done this? We want to help you and encourage you.
So we're going to get at the end, we're going to do the kind of the red flags, the things to watch out for. But as far as the way fraud, I think some people also feel like, well, there's nothing that can be done. So will you talk a little bit about what some of the repercussions when fraud's reported, what happens next?
Yes, well, in an ideal world in North Dakota, what should happen is that it will be reported either to APS, who will then do their own investigation and go visit unannounced the victim to find out what's going on, and then they will cross-report to law enforcement. Or if the situation is urgent, certainly it goes straight to law enforcement. Hopefully it goes to a first responding patrol officer who knows a little bit about fraud and how it works, and will then not dismiss it as a civil matter, and they will actually take it seriously and bring it back to their office. And hopefully there's a detective there that will then go deeper and follow the money. And hopefully then it will end up with an identifiable suspect who can be arrested. And hopefully then it will go to a county prosecutor who also understands how fraud works and who will not be deterred by the fact that the victim is elderly or shows signs of vulnerability, and who will then issue the case. In a perfect world scenario, that is what we would love to happen, but it doesn't always happen. And that's where I like to spend my time trying to encourage law enforcement how to respond better, more effectively. And then I try to reach out to prosecutors and help them understand these cases are prosecutable. They have massive jury appeal, and you will get convictions if the evidence is there beyond a reasonable doubt. So
a lot of times we think of these as being small amounts or not that much, but people lose their life savings. They lose their homes. They lose so much. Can you talk a little bit about the impact? Because it isn't just financial. A lot of times it's really emotional too, because these are criminals who play on emotions, and it's really damaging in a lot of ways. Would you speak to that a little?
Absolutely. I've, during the course of my career, obviously interacted with many, many victims of fraud. One of the first things many of them lose is their dignity, their own sense of self-respect. many victims start questioning themselves. They bang themselves, not literally, but figuratively, over the head. And they almost coil up into depression. I've seen people do that a lot of times. I've seen people lose weight. They change their whole appearance. It has devastating effects, both emotionally and economically. I mentioned this morning about a couple who've become dear friends of ours, and the wife has ended up in a memory care unit with serious dementia. Her husband, and together they lost over $690,000. And the husband has told me, I am convinced that my wife has severe dementia because of her discovery that we lost our life savings to this scam. He said she spiraled down into depression, but I believe that depression then spiraled into the dementia. So it can have many ripple effects. And that's why I always try to convince judges at the sentencing, Your Honor, this is a violent crime in so many ways. Just because a gun was never used doesn't make it any less violent. Fraud can have devastating impacts on the victim, and as a result, you need to take that into account when sentencing this defendant.
But it's not hopeless. These things happen, but there's a lot of ways to protect yourself. So let's talk about some of those. I know you leave people with some really top-line things to be watching out for, to be aware of, ways that you can know it's a red flag, to step back, pause. Will you talk about some of those top red flags?
Great. And you mentioned a key word, pause. And the fraudsters out there will use emotion. They will use urgent situation. They will use panic. They will use your grandson's in trouble. You need to send money now and don't tell anybody. That's a real red flag. If somebody's telling you to do something with money and not tell anybody else, for certain, that is a scam. It's a fraud. If somebody says you've won something, but you need to pay the taxes, that is a fraud. If somebody calls you and says there's an arrest warrant out for your arrest, but you can get out of it by paying money, that is a fraud. Trust me, law enforcement never tips off people that there's an arrest warrant out for them because they don't want people to know. They want to surprise them and catch them where they live. And so that is a clear a red flag. And then on a personal level, we can do things to guard ourselves. We can, for example, freeze our credit. And so that way we can be assured that nobody else can obtain a credit card in our name. And it's not a permanent thing. You can unfreeze it at some point in time. But that's a good way of protecting yourself. We need to be careful about our mail. Mailbox theft is on the rise. And if you live in a location where your mailbox is unlocked, you need to try to do something about that. I always tell people also, if you can afford it, put in a doorbell video camera. And even if you don't have video surveillance, put in a sign in your front saying, this premises is under video surveillance. The crooks don't know whether that's true or not. And there's no problem in putting in be careful, we've got a vicious dog here. Put that sign up if you like. Just do things that will possibly deter somebody from choosing you as the next victim. Be aware of your personal circumstances and always check with family before you ever want to make a financial transfer of any kind of funds. Don't do that in an urgent situation. Always check with a trusted individual.
And I would say that a lot of that information, as well as more than that, can be found. AARP is a great resource. I know that's one of the reasons that you do this work. And maybe you can, I'll let you expand on it, and then I'll give that website site address.
Do. And that's why when AARP came calling and asked me if I would like to be an ambassador, I immediately responded because I believe wholeheartedly in the mission of AARP. And it's not just for the free tote bag that they give out, right? There's so much more that AARP offers. The website, the tips, the emails, to sign up for those emails that they give you the latest on current scams and frauds. The magazine, which I hope people receive as a member, full of great information that you can then pass on. I'm always telling people, don't just read it. You pass that information on to your neighbor, to your next door to your friends that you go to the place of worship with. Because you never know, something that you've learned from AARP may help your friend avoid becoming the next victim.
That is all true. And to find out about all of those things and more, just go to aarp.org/fraud. And that's where you'll find our Fraud Watch network, all of the resources. There's a Fraud Watch hotline. There is so much information, as well as places to report, and so much more. aarp.org/fraud. Thank you, Paul. This has been a great
pleasure.
conversation.
Thank you, Marnie.
Yeah.